At the beginning of the film, we see a small family driving a car. The family consists of the husband, Louis, the wife, Rachel, their two children, Ellie and Gage, and their pet cat, Church. After spending several hours on the road, they finally arrive at their new home. This small family decided to move from the densely populated city of Boston to a remote village because Louis, the husband, wanted to lead a quieter and more peaceful life with his small family. Surrounded by dense trees, a large yard, and a vast forest, their new home truly becomes a dream home for this small family. However, even though the house is in a remote village, their house, which is right on the edge of the road, is very prone to accidents. Trucks and other heavy vehicles will speed by when passing in front of their new house. The next day, they begin to live their usual lives. Louis, who is a doctor, starts working again, while his wife Rachel and their daughter Ellie start cleaning the house. While they are in the yard, they accidentally see some local residents walking by wearing animal masks. Ellie asks her mother what they are doing. Her mother, Rachel, replies that it might be some kind of local ritual. Rachel invites Ellie to go back inside the house, but Ellie, who is curious, secretly follows the people wearing masks. After walking for a while through the forest, the 9-year-old finally arrives at a place called Pet Cemetery. This place is filled with various animal graves. The gloomy atmosphere is very palpable until Ellie sees a pile of wood. Ellie's curiosity arises again to see what is behind the pile of wood. Ellie starts climbing. After a short while, she is startled by the voice of an old man who tells her not to climb. Startled, Ellie falls. The old man approaches and helps Ellie to stand up. He introduces himself as Judd. He lives not far from their new home. Rachel, realizing that Ellie is missing, finally appears and asks Ellie not to wander alone here. Judd reminds this small family again that the forest where they are now is not safe. After thanking Judd, Rachel quickly takes her daughter away from the graveyard area. Shortly after being left alone, strange voices appear and invite Judd to walk past the pile of wood, but Judd ignores them and also quickly leaves the graveyard area. A big mystery indeed awaits behind that pile of wood, a mystery that may only be known by Judd, who has lived in the area for decades. In short, to strengthen the relationship with their neighbor, Judd was invited for dinner by this small family. During the dinner, Judd shared many stories, including about the pet cemetery and the 50 hectares of surrounding land that all belonged to Louis. Louis, who did not realize that the house he bought had such a large plot of land, was stunned by this information. The next day, while Louis was accompanying Ellie to play from a distance, Judd was seen calling him and showing that Ellie's beloved cat, Church, had been run over by a truck. Thinking that Ellie would be very sad if she saw her beloved cat dead, Louis and Judd tried to hide the cat's body and planned to bury it at night so that Ellie wouldn't see it. At night in the darkness, Louis, accompanied by Judd, was seen digging a hole to bury the cat's gruesomely dead body. They were both now right at the pet cemetery, where the pile of wood was clearly visible. While Louis was busy digging at that moment, the soft voices from behind the pile of wood called out to Judd again. Judd then took the wrapped cat's body and asked Louis to follow him into the forest. Confused, Louis asked Judd why they didn't bury it here, but Judd just kept walking and climbed the pile of wood in front of him. Louis reluctantly followed Judd from behind. They walked quite a distance into the forest, passing through the cold night. The two men finally arrived at an area that felt eerie, with many mysterious sounds coming from this place. Louis, who knew nothing, even felt something strange about the place they had come to. Judd asked Louis to start digging and place the cat's body into the hole he dug. Afterward, the grave was marked by Louis with some stones on top, and the two men walked back to their respective homes. The next day, Rachel and Louis had to lie to Ellie, saying that they had looked for Church everywhere but could not find him. Strangely, Ellie replied that Church was not missing. Last night, the cat entered her room and hid in the closet. Louis was silent. He then walked slowly to the closet pointed out by Ellie, opened it, and indeed the cat he had buried last night, which should have been dead, was inside the closet. It was indeed Church, but the cat looked dirty and had become very aggressive. Confused, Louis then went to see Judd at his house. Louis told him that the cat that should have been dead and buried had suddenly reappeared. Judd simply answered that there were indeed various mystical places in this world, and one of them was the place they had visited last night. For a doctor who always thinks rationally like Louis, this incident was illogical. For Louis, a mystical place that could bring the dead back to life was just a fairy tale. Louis, who was confused, continued to search for information, including on the internet. Here he found some information about sacred lands, which according to the map, were located around their new family's house. Day after day, Ellie's resurrected cat began to show signs of aggression. It started scratching Ellie, eating other animals, and seemed to want to attack Ellie's baby brother. Louis, who could no longer stand seeing the aggressive cat, went to see Judd at his house again. Here, Judd began to tell the story that decades ago, he also had a beloved dog that, when it died, he buried it in the sacred land. It was true that the dog came back to life, but the dog became more aggressive and had to be killed again. Judd saw Ellie's cat as a good animal and hoped that if the cat was buried in the sacred land and came back to life, it would still be a good cat. But his assumption was wrong. Here he concluded that anyone buried in that sacred land would indeed come back to life, but with changed traits. Hearing this, Louis went home, caught Church, and because he couldn't bear to kill him, he drove far away and abandoned him. On Ellie's birthday, a few days after Louis had abandoned the cat, while she was playing with her friends, disaster struck. Ellie was hiding behind a tree and saw Church walking from a distance. The cat walked towards the middle of the road. Ellie, who was very happy to see her beloved cat back, quickly ran to meet the cat. But her little brother, who was still a toddler, seeing Ellie run into the middle of the road, also ran to meet her. Meanwhile, from the end of the road, a large truck was seen speeding towards them. Louis, shocked to see his toddler running into the middle of the road where the truck was speeding, ran as fast as he could to try to pull his child away. It was true that Ellie's little brother was saved, but not Ellie, who was in the middle of the road at that moment. Even though the reckless truck driver tried to swerve, the 9-year-old still had to die under the truck's load. Louis was devastated to see his beloved daughter die in front of him. The birthday party that should have ended happily now turned into deep sorrow. On the day of Ellie's funeral, her mother Rachel could not stop crying, while Louis, with a heart just as broken from losing his beloved daughter, could only watch as Ellie's coffin was slowly lowered into the grave. As a man and a father, Louis had to appear strong, even though tears were streaming down his face. Since Ellie's death, the atmosphere in the small family's home changed drastically. There was no more joyful laughter heard from inside the house. Rachel could only cry all day in the room, reminiscing about her beloved daughter. Unable to bear seeing his wife constantly engulfed in sadness, Louis asked Rachel and their toddler to visit her parents' house in Boston. Louis was left alone until finally, losing his sanity, he quickly went to Ellie's grave one night to exhume it. He intended to take Ellie's body to be reburied in the sacred land, hoping that his beloved daughter could come back to life. Louis walked through the dark night carrying the body of his daughter who had been dead for several days. After arriving at the sacred land, Louis dug and buried his beloved daughter there. After that, Louis returned home, waiting for Ellie to come back to life. Sure enough, on the day Ellie returned, even though her physical appearance was very messy and she looked like a living corpse, Louis was very happy to see his daughter alive again. He hugged Ellie like a father hugging his child with full affection, caressing Ellie, and even lying down with the living corpse. Meanwhile, Rachel, who had been in the big city for a few days, finally returned home where Louis was. Rachel kept trying to contact Louis, but Louis was very difficult to reach. Worried, Rachel contacted Judd and asked him to check on Louis. Judd hurried to Louis's house and met with Louis. Seeing Louis's demeanor as if he was hiding something, Judd finally suspected that Louis had gone to the sacred land without his knowledge. How shocked Judd was when he saw Ellie, the child who should have died in an accident, peeking through the window of Louis's house. Judd ran home and immediately closed his door, grabbed his gun, and tried to protect himself, because he knew well that those who came back to life after being buried in the sacred land would become very fierce, wild, and dangerous. Sure enough, only a few moments at home, he already heard footsteps from the second floor of his house. Holding his gun, Judd searched for the source of the footsteps. Not finding anything on the upper floor, Judd went back downstairs, But just a few steps down, his leg was stabbed and he was pushed down by a masked figure. Ellie. Ellie jumped and attacked Judd, killing him with several stabs. Not long after, Rachel and her child also returned home. Rachel saw Louis looking disheveled with boots still full of dirt. With no way to deny it, Louis confessed to Rachel that he could not accept Ellie's death and had brought her back to life in the sacred land. Ellie then appeared with a physical appearance like a living corpse and greeted her mother. Rachel was silent and very frightened. Terrified, Rachel quickly rushed upstairs to the bedroom. Only a few moments upstairs, suddenly Ellie appeared from under the bed and jumped at Rachel holding a knife. Ellie looked very wild and uncontrollable. Rachel struggled while holding Ellie, who was trying to kill her. Louis, realizing Ellie was missing, started searching for Ellie around the house, including at Judd's house, and finally found Judd dead. Realizing Judd's death was Ellie's doing, Louis quickly rushed back home worried about Rachel and Gage's safety. Rachel, who had been suddenly attacked by Ellie, managed to break free and lock Ellie in the room. Rachel was very panicked, especially being trapped upstairs with her toddler. Ellie looked very wild and kept breaking down the door. Rachel damaged the window and lowered Gage from above, assisted by Louis, who had returned from Judd's house. But just as Rachel was about to jump from the top floor, Ellie, who had broken in, finally attacked Rachel from behind. Louis put Gage in the car and followed Rachel upstairs, but it was too late. Louis found Rachel already dying, and without realizing it, Ellie hit him from behind with a wooden chair until he passed out. Ellie then dragged Rachel's dead body into the woods, seemingly intending to revive Rachel in the sacred land. Louis, regaining consciousness and realizing Ellie and Rachel were gone, quickly searched the woods. Upon arriving at the pet cemetery, Ellie appeared and said Louis was too late and she had already buried Rachel in the sacred land. Ellie then attacked Louis with the knife she had. Ellie was very fierce, but fortunately with the remaining strength Louis had, he managed to throw Ellie to the ground. Just as he was about to send Ellie back to the afterlife, Rachel, revived from death, appeared from behind and killed Louis. Louis died, and the two living corpses then dragged Louis and buried him in the sacred land. In short, Louis, Rachel, Ellie, and Church had turned into living corpses, approaching Gage, who was still in the car. The toddler could only remain silent, seeing his entire family approaching him, and the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.